When the Pickman family moves into their dream house, their future seems bright. Until the ghost of a troubled child intrudes. Unearthly visions and violent attacks expose an evil force and fury brewing for centuries.
We're back once again. This is episode 67.
That's right.
Yeah.
And we're getting back to the haunting series.
Yeah,
Everybody loves this.
Yeah, we figured we hadn't done one of those in a while. And like I said, I've been trying to kind of switch out true crime and paranormal and stuff like that. So since it was time to do another paranormal one, and we thought, well, we haven't done an episode of a haunting for a long time, so let's do one of those. Like I had actually scheduled it for later, but we decided to do it this week.
And we're going to do Sallie's House.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And this is actually a very famous case. I'm not entirely clear on whether the house was famously haunted before these people moved in that were on a haunting, or if it was known around town as being haunted before that. Why
do you bring it up?
I'm just saying, since it's like such a well-known haunted house nowadays.
Oh, okay. You don't know.
So I don't know if it stemmed from the early. I mean, because the haunting was not the first thing that this couple were on. Were not the first TV show that they were on, like about this haunting. So, but we'll get into that a little bit later. It was a season 1 episode and probably one of the most famous ones.
Yeah.
So we'll kind of talk about the house and how it kind of differed from, the real story, quote unquote, as it's known. And
so you were able to dig up some more on this?
A little bit, yeah. Okay. There's, like I said, there's all of these. It's just like kind of he said, she said. So you're just kind of going by what people put on various paranormal blogs.
And then we can give our commentary and analysis of this case. So let's go ahead and do the little plugs and get that stuff out of the way, and we'll get into the case.
Yeah, not really anything super extensive this week, just kind of like plugging my book, The Faceless Villain, out in print and ebook. I finally uploaded the audiobook.
It will be ready.
So if it goes through the quality control okay, it should be on sale in about 10 days from now. Or 10 to 14 days usually.
And then we'll figure out a way to get everybody who's asked for a copy of this to get you your codes.
Yeah.
We're going to do the Patreon patrons first. Do you know how we're going to contact them? Should we contact them through Patreon?
Yeah, I can do that. I can just send everybody a message on there, and I'll give you a code if you want it.
Right.
So if you sent me a message before about wanting a code and stuff like that, I have a list, but just remind me just in case, I left someone off or something like that. So I can make sure that everybody that wanted a code gets one. Because like I said, I only get 25. So it's kind of first come, first serve. Also, we would like to thank our newest Patreon patron, whose name is, and I hope I'm pronouncing this right, is Jamin. Or Jammin.
Okay.
It's just one M. So yeah, it could, or it might be that too.
Probably Yamin.
So thank you. That is our latest patron. Also, we just did another movie review on the Michael Caine movie The Hand.
The Hand.
From 1981, which was we really liked that movie from our childhood.
Yeah, people seem to be enjoying it so far.
Yeah, so go check that out if you haven't already. And also, as I usually say, go check out our Patreon page at patreon.com/13o'clockpodcast. Or if you would rather give a one-time donation, just go to our blog, which is 13o'clockpodcast.wordpress.com. And there is a little link in the sidebar to a PayPal where you can give a donation if you would like to do that.
We are always looking for new patrons.
Yes, we are.
Yes.
And we love all our
patrons. Trying to reach our goal of $1,000 a month.
$1 million. Yeah, that'd be nice too, but I don't think that's going to happen. No. But that's okay. All right. So anyway, we're talking about the Sallie's House haunting, and mostly specifically about the haunting episode that they made about it from season 1. Although it should be noted that I believe the first TV show that was made about this case was actually the show Sightings. And that came out in the mid 90s.
Yeah, I remember that show.
Yeah, which
It's
was
pretty
only
good.
which was right around the time, like it was right around the time that this couple lived in this house, because they moved in the house in 1993. So Sightings was actually the first show to talk about it, and then A Haunting did it. Did Paranormal Witness do it?
I don't think so.
I kind of wanted to say that they did, but maybe not.
Now that you're mentioning all these little series, I'm wondering if you can get them on DVD.
Oh, I'm sure you can.
Yeah.
Well, I think Sightings was actually pretty popular, wasn't it?
Yeah. And remember, what was the other one that had Richard Stack? And his name Richard Stack?
Robert Stack.
Robert Stack.
Unsolved Mysteries.
Unsolved Mysteries. That went on for what, like 20 seasons?
That shit had to be, like, okay, the thing about Unsolved Mysteries is I think that Robert Stack made essentially an infinite number of episodes.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Because every time... Because I've seen, like, a bunch of the shows in reruns. I used to watch it with my grandma all the time. And I never see the same one twice. How the fuck does that happen?
I don't know. That was a good series, though, because you never knew what it was going to be. Sometimes it was just disappearances and stuff like that.
Yeah, like, they were all, like, most of them weren't paranormal, but it's like, you know, I liked creepy unsolved murders and shit like that.
They had some really good UFO cases on there that
they had UFO cases,
really, I haven't really heard from since, you know?
Yeah.
But, I bet you they do have some DVDs of those.
I'm sure they probably do.
Yeah.
I don't even know how long that was on. I think it was on for a while.
30 years.
30 years. But yeah, so the show Sightings actually covered this case. After the Haunting episode came out, I don't know if there was a paranormal witness. I kind of think there wasn't.
I don't think so, no.
But the house subsequently became very famous for being haunted. And so it has subsequently been featured on, I think Ghost Adventures went there and all of that kind of stuff. Like, I kind of saw the Ghost Adventures episode about this house.
Yeah.
And I was kind of like, well... I should probably watch it, but I have a hard time sitting through an episode of Ghost Adventures.
Yeah, Ghost Adventures.
No offense, like, to people that are, like, fans of the show, but
yeah.
I find it really tedious, and they're always just kind of like, hey, did you feel that? Did you? And I'm like, no, we can't feel that through the TV.
I don't know what the demographic it's marketed towards. Single mothers at home raising children? What,
I don't really know, actually. I mean, like I said...
Who watches that?
It's not even, like, at least A Haunting has, like, reenactments, and it's like, at least there's something happening.
Right.
Even if you think it's bullshit.
Right.
I mean, at least it's entertaining, like the way a ghost story is entertaining. Or like a little horror movie.
Like the way killing Bigfoot would be entertaining.
Right. That's what I mean. At least something entertaining is going on.
You can't kill Bigfoot, then people! And then like
causing a rift in the town.
The trailer is just rednecks in camo jumping into like bunkers and closing the lids
and screaming
on the top of them with shotguns and stuff like that. Ridiculous.
How can they make a whole season out of that? Oh, no. I never could bring myself.
It's probably not around.
I never could bring myself to watch it. Like,
just
to see.
Dumb.
Even though I was kind of curious. But yeah, the thing.
Bring that mud truck over here. Put them lights on there. Is that Bigfoot? Just stupid shit.
No, that's just Earl.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, you know, A Haunting, Paranormal Witness, like I said, at least it has, you could watch it as though it was a fictional ghost story because there's shit actually happening. Yeah. Whereas Ghost Adventures is just a bunch of dudes wandering around an abandoned building with night vision cameras. Pretending like they're
investigating.
Pretending like they're hearing things or they're feeling people touch them and stuff. It's just not that compelling. You know, I'm sorry about that. But they did go and explore this house because, like I said, subsequently, this house is generally on most lists of the quote-unquote most haunted houses in America. For sure, considered the most haunted house in Kansas, where it is. It's in Atchison, Kansas. And so, you know, it's the subject of a lot of ghost tours and stuff like that. And you can easily find it. It's 508 North Street or something like that. There's pictures of it all over the internet, like the house. It's looks similar to the one that they put in A Haunting. So basically, the story of The Haunting, it's Deb and Tony Pickman. And they move into this house in, I believe it was March of 1993.
Yeah.
Deb was pregnant at the time.
Yeah.
About 3 months after they move in, she has the baby. The baby's name is Taylor. And at first, you know, there wasn't much weird going on. I think the first thing they noticed was the TV going off and on.
That's right, TV going off and on.
Which, you know...
They thought it was bad wiring.
Yeah, which you would. Like, you know, ours did that for a while, too.
Yeah, wasn't that weird?
Yeah, it was pretty weird.
Yeah, it hasn't done it in a long time.
Well, we don't have
no TV
we don't have that TV in the living room anymore.
That's right.
The strange thing about the one in our house is that it never did it, and none of the other TVs in the house ever did it.
Yes, it did it in our bedroom, remember?
Oh, one time.
Yeah, in the middle of the night it turned on.
That's right.
Yeah,
that was weird. Was the only time it did it.
I think it did it twice.
Oh, okay. The one in the living room, it was like pretty much every other day. It would turn on by itself.
It did it in this other side room over here a couple times. But it was weird. I talked to the cable company, the direct TV company, about it.
Yeah, they came to fix something unrelated.
And I told them about it, and they just looked at me like no. And I said,
what are you talking about? You're like, yeah,
it turns on by itself.
All the time.
Yeah,
all the time.
That one out there did. And that was during the time that other stuff was going on.
Yeah, we haven't really noticed anything weird for a long time.
No, it's been a while. It's kind of like, work the kinks out or something. I'm not as on edge as I was back in that period.
Maybe that's what it was.
Remember that because we were writing poltergeist books during that time. And
well, we were talking about it all the time. That's why.
And you kept saying you wanted to see it, and it would manifest itself in certain ways.
Yeah, that's true. So maybe the more we talk about
the hand was popping out.
Yeah.
I wish you would. Never mind.
What?
It would. Remember what the hand did to Michael Caine? Jumped up his pant leg, and grabbed him by the nuts.
Briefly, and then
Good thing that didn't happen to me.
Wouldn't that have been something? Would have been funny for me to watch, but it's not so funny for you.
No.
But yeah, so the first thing they noticed was TV going on, off and on by itself, and they were just like, whatevs, it's, we'll call an electrician or whatever. Now, the next thing they notice is that they go up into the nursery.
Yeah.
And there are a bunch of stuffed animals, and they're sitting on the floor in a circle, all facing outward, like they're having a little pagan teddy bear rite.
Yeah.
Okay, well, at first, they're kind of like, oh, that's weird. They blame each other of doing it because at this point, the baby's been born, and Deb's sister has come for a week to visit, so she's staying with them to help out or whatever. So all three of them see this. Now, at first, they're blaming each other, like, did you do that? I didn't do that. I've been with you all day. Fuck off, and stuff like that. So at first, they think that it's Tony's brother, who lives next door, sneaking into the house and fucking up their shit, to freak him out. Because apparently they said, oh, they're pranksters and they played tricks on each other all the time. So that's at first what they thought it was. So then they put all the toys away, and then they leave the room, and according to them, it was only a few minutes later, and Tony is walking past the nursery again, and all the stuffed animals are on the floor sitting in a circle again.
Yeah, and this is very reminiscent of my poltergeist.
That's what I was saying. That is very much like shit that happened in your case.
At Mammoth Mountain, except it would do it for hours or days on end.
Yeah.
Like clockwork. And it would even turn lights off and on to tell you when to look into the room or when to open the door. Yeah, it's like, hey,
I did something.
Hey, I did it. Look, So when I first heard that, I was thinking, the first time I saw this episode, I was like, poltergeist. And then I started to wonder if whether or not, she had just given birth. Made me wonder if a young pregnant woman, maybe because of hormonal imbalances, may initiate some kind of a poltergeist phenomenon. I started to think that. It's weird. As the phenomenon continues, maybe not.
Yeah, it seems to get more ghost-like, but it starts out very poltergeist-like.
But a poltergeist is a fake ghost. It can impersonate a ghost for a long time, and it'll impersonate anything you think it is.
Yeah.
I'm not entirely convinced that this was ghost, even to this day.
Yeah.
I think it might have been poltergeist. The only thing that would convince me otherwise is whether or not these people left this house and then at a later date other people came to the same location and witnessed it again.
Right.
Then that means it's not related to the people. It's related to the location. So I would say interactive haunting. But I don't know. Was there any other information that you were able to dig up?
Now, evidently, some other ghost, paranormal investigators that went there afterward, in subsequent years, because this couple was only there. They were there for less than 2 years.
Okay.
And after they left, and Deb Pickman eventually wrote a book about it, which is called Sallie House. So I think it kind of gained a lot of steam from that. So evidently some paranormal groups, I've seen some videos on YouTube and stuff like that say they've picked up EVPs there, that's a big thing, that they've got photographic anomalies, that sort of shit.
Yeah, that's not the same as moving objects.
Right. So I don't really know.
Multiple witnesses, like in this case. I'm going to go ahead and say right now, just based on the way the phenomenon started and the way it's described throughout this case, I'm going to say this is a poltergeist, a classic poltergeist case, RSPK, recurrent spontaneous psychokinesis, by the subconscious. I'm just going to say that. That's how I think it is.
Yeah, okay.
Right. All right. But okay, now, continue the story. They're going to paint it as a ghost case. That's the way haunting does.
Well, yeah, that's what they do.
Okay.
But, okay, so like I said, these toys are moving around. At first, they think the brother is doing it. So the brother is over at the house, and they're like, hey, what have you been doing? Climbing in the window or something like that? And the brother's like, what the fuck are you talking about? It's like, I wasn't even home that day. It's like, it wasn't me. Then, the brother starts joking around saying, oh, what do you think your fucking house is haunted or something like that? And then he starts going around. I don't know if it looked like the nursery, but I guess it was the living room. And he goes around, starts taking pictures, like jokingly.
Yeah.
And evidently he sees a teddy bear that was sitting on a chair come flying off by itself.
It just sounds like poltergeist. That's poltergeist.
So they were all kind of like, okay, fuck this shit. So, fair play to them. This is all that's happened so far, just teddy bears moving around by themselves. And they said, okay, well, we're going to leave the house for a little while because this is kind of freaking us out.
Right.
So they went to, I think it was Tony's parents' house for a little while. Now, they said, okay, we hung out there and we were kind of freaked out by it. Now, while Tony is putting the baby in the car, he says he feels something on his back. He said it felt like a bee sting. But he's like, we were all kind of flipping out and everything, so I didn't really think that much about it. But when they get to Tony's parents' house, I guess Deb kind of touches his back or something like that. And he's like, oh man, that thing bit me or something like that. And she lifts his shirt up and there are the telltale 3 scratch marks.
Sound familiar?
On his back. Yeah, which also happened in your case, although not on a body. It happened
on a door frame.
On a door frame.
Yeah, and it ripped the lock, the chain to the door chain apart. And what's funny is it's never 4 and it's never 2.
It's always 3. Like, yeah.
I guess because 2 wouldn't really look like a claw, and 4 is one scratch extra. You don't actually have to have 4 to make it look like a claw mark. Yeah. But if it's 3, that's a minimum amount to make it look like a claw mark. Yeah. So maybe that's conserving energy in some way.
Now, some paranormal researchers say it's 3 because it's a mocking of the Trinity because it's demonic and yada yada. But I don't buy that. Bullshit. But it always does seem to be 3. No. So there's 3 big scratch marks on his back. So at this point, they're just kind of like, okay, well, obviously something weird is going on in this house. So then the brother says, my boss's sister is like a psychic or like a parapsychology lecturer or something like that. So why don't you have her come to the house and, see if she can figure out what's going on. So this woman comes to the house and she says that she senses a spirit that's like a little girl that's like about 7 years old. Yeah. And that her name is Sallie.
Well, you know what I say. Yeah. I say never bring any of those psychics into any kind of a paranormal situation. You want to bring in an investigator. Yeah. Somebody who's impartial.
But the thing is, and this happens on a lot of haunting episodes too, it's like, okay, we know a lot of people, right? Yeah. Do we know anyone that's a psychic? No. Do we know anyone that knows anyone that's a psychic? I don't think we do we?
No. Maybe. Well, you know what though? There may be some 2-bit psychics on our friends list. So. And if you could grab a random one of those, you're not going to get much. You'd be lost.
To me, it seems kind of weird. It's like maybe these people travel in different social circles than us, but it's like it seems like every episode of a haunting, they know somebody that's a psychic, or they know someone that knows someone
that's very out of style.
Or a Native American shaman or something like that, which is like, where are these people hanging out?
I think that's very out of style now. I can remember running into tarot card readers and stuff in the 90s, and that's the last time.
I do feel like that was kind of bigger back then in the day, especially in the goth scene. You did get like kind of a lot of Wiccans.
Computers and internet have shot holes in all that kind of stuff. You just don't see it anymore.
But so this psychic comes in and tells them about that there's a little girl and its name is Sallie. And she tells Tony, the husband, to take pictures around the house. The wife, Deb, this is actually what makes this episode kind of unusual, is because Deb is like, she finds out about this little ghost and everything, and she is super fucking into it. She is like, that's awesome. There's like a little girl ghost in the house, because the psychic tells her, oh, well, the baby or the ghost is just trying to protect the baby, which is why the little ghost scratched the dad, because maybe she thought the dad was hurting the baby or something like that. Yes, me.
That's another one in favor of my hypothesis. Yeah. That she is the poltergeist focus. Maybe. That's why she's enjoying it.
Yeah. All right. Because she just thought that was the coolest thing ever.
She thinks it's the coolest thing because it's generated by her subconscious.
Maybe.
That's what I think it was. Because I was in certain points in mine, I was the same way. I would kind of waver between being terrified or being really interested in this thing and interacting with it, And her husband was just freaked out. by it.
Yeah, he was like not really down with the whole, especially, I mean, he was the one that got scratched.
Yeah.
So he was like not super happy about it.
The situation in general sounds like RSPK, sounds like poltergeist.
And I mean, they had just had a baby, and then apparently when this paranormal stuff started happening, a lot of tension started building up between the two of them because Deb was like really was very positive about the haunting, and Tony was much less so.
The family's under a lot of stress. They just had a kid. There's financial burdens involved. She's got some hormonal imbalances being a new mother, and that's, I think, kicked off psychic abilities.
It very well could have.
Yeah, of course, like I said, this is always the subconscious that's doing it.
Yeah.
Telekinesis.
So Deb decides, well, since she thinks this is such a cool thing that this kid is here, I think actually the psychic sort of encourages her to, you know, let the kid stay. It's fine. You know, she's protecting the baby and everything like that. Yeah. So Deb goes to the store to buy the ghost some toys of her own.
Okay, so the psychic has encouraged a poltergeist focus to go ahead and indulge in this ghostly fantasy of having a little child protect her spirit. So that's going to start, so the poltergeist is going to start manifesting those type of qualities. Yeah. And more. Yeah. Which you find out later on.
Right. Now, one thing I thought was a little bit weird, like Deb goes to the store and she buys like little teddy bears and stuff like that she's going to give. But they also put another crib in the nursery. The baby sometimes sleeps in the crib, but usually they put him in a bassinet in their room just for safety purposes. But I'm like, the ghost, if it's really a ghost, she's 7. 7-year-old kids don't sleep in cribs.
No.
So I'm just saying, wouldn't you give her like a little bed or something? I would think. Or a little Barbie bed. She would like that.
You never can't tell with these people, man.
But so yeah. Now, while she's buying the teddy bears and stuff like that, she picks up the pictures that Tony took while the psychic was there. And now the psychic evidently told him to take pictures at a particular place. Like the psychic was like, oh, well, I feel her energy at the top of the stairs, so take a picture of the top of the stairs. Now, apparently, the picture that he took and the ones they showed on the show were obviously not the real pictures because they never do that. They do on Paranormal Witness, they actually show the actual shit. Yeah. But a haunting they never do. Yeah. Because it's never as cool as what they show.
Because a haunting sucks. Okay.
I have a love-hate relationship with a haunting.
Only on a few episodes of The Haunting do they actually show the actual photo.
They hardly ever do.
Yeah, and that was only in the very beginning, like the first series. Yeah. And they didn't want the audience, I think, to come to expect that because so many of the episodes don't have any evidence to back them up. Yeah. They're good. It's a good series, especially the first couple seasons. I like it. It's very comforting to watch. There's something about the soundtrack.
And that guy's voice, like the narrator.
And the same actors over and over again, you know what I mean? You can sit there and it's like junk food television. You can just sit there and kind of...
Yeah, sometimes we will put one of the DVDs on and then just like let it cycle in the back and just like take a nap.
Yeah, and while we're just, minds are just wandering.
But yeah, now one of the photos, and they kind of showed like, a simulated one in the episode. But one of the photos, evidently, the real one, I believe, is actually on Google. If it's the same one that I saw, I'll put it in the YouTube video.
It's that one.
But apparently, this one was taken by the TV show Sightings in the 90s. Okay. Now, it does show the staircase of the house, and there's like a weird...
haze.
Fog, yeah.
Doesn't that sound familiar? It sounds a lot like Mammoth Mountain Poltergeist, doesn't it? Even though that looks...
look pretty strange. Yeah. It doesn't look like a person. No. Like the one that they showed in a haunting looked kind of like a person, but that one doesn't.
That looks a lot thicker than what I saw at Mammoth. And see how it's not uniform? It's like almost V-shaped.
Yeah, it's like a V-shaped...
Yeah, whenever I saw it, it was just either totally round up near the ceiling in a corner, or it would just cover the whole ceiling, or you'd look down at the end of the hallway and you'd see an open door in a room, and the whole room would be kind of filled with a slight haze. You know what I mean? Yeah. But that looks pretty. The thing is, what I saw, you wouldn't be able to photograph it. It wasn't that pronounced. Right. You know, it'd be like trying to photograph a really light fog. Or a mist inside a house, right. You know what I mean? It wouldn't show
this up. Does look that almost... It's almost looks solid.
It almost looks faked, if you ask me. Almost like somebody put a little smoke bomb there or something.
That could be.
Or did something to the camera lens. That
like
might
I
be
said,
something on the camera lens causing a blur.
This famous photo, it's actually from the sightings episode. Their crew took this particular photo. I don't know how, because like I said, in the episode of A Haunting, Tony took the photo.
That's a
after the
photo or
psychic
that's
told
a video?
That's a photo.
I'd like to see the actual photo before I'd make up my mind. It looks a little pronounced.
So, yeah. But, in the episode of A Haunting, they basically took a whole roll of film and, back in the old days, kids, you had to take the roll of film to the 1 hour photo or the lab and have them.
Yeah, that shit sucked too. It was a nightmare.
Yeah. And you didn't, and if you ran out of film, or if your pictures were fucked up,
the pictures
you wouldn't know
the
until
pictures were always fucked up,
and they were always fucked up.
They were always fucked up.
And then and you wouldn't know until you went to pick them up, and then you'd be like, oh well, there's
and you're
I was trying to take a picture of our wedding, and now all your fucking pictures
what was funny is
up.
you go, oh, these are going to turn out so good, and they would all be bad. They come, you know what I mean? Okay, you youngsters would know that when you're taking a picture with your phone, half of them pictures you're throwing away because the eyes are closed and bad expressions. Well, back in the day of film, every single shot would be one that you would throw away.
Yeah. And then you'd have to buy a whole
out of an entire roll of film, you were lucky to get one photo that you'd like to keep.
Yeah.
That had people in it. It was easy to take pictures of objects and places.
Your
people,
thumb.
Yeah.
I took about a zillion pictures of the fucking camera strap back in my day. Because you couldn't see it when you were taking the picture, but if your hand was in the wrong place, it kind of put it in front of the lens. Yeah. Hee. And then you would take the picture and you'd be like, that was awesome. And then you'd get it back and it was just a big blur.
I smoked back in those days. So half the time I just got cigarette smoke. Yeah, because you exhale
I didn't even think of
smoke.
That.
You had the cigarette burning in your right hand, and the smoke would go out in front of the damn lens. And
every now and then,
the flash would hit it.
Every now and then, you would get a really cool, accidentally atmospheric and awesome picture doing that. Yeah. But 99 times out of 100, it just didn't look like anything. Yeah. So that might have been the case for that. But in the episode of A Haunting, they took a whole roll of film, and every single picture, so they implied on the show, had some kind of anomaly in it, had some kind of fog in it, or some kind of weird
I'd like to
figure.
See it.
Or, none of them really looked like orbs. They all kind of looked like weird shapes or whatever.
Yeah, I'd like to see it. That could be plausible in a strong poltergeist case. Something like that might be plausible.
So, like I said, at this point, a lot of tension between the two of them because Deb is super into it. Yeah. Now...
Then tension can fuel poltergeist.
Yeah, now she shows the pictures to him, and he's like, holy shit, look at that. Then her sister and her sister's husband come over, one night to hang out or whatever. And they're looking at the pictures going, this looks like it's probably not too good. And then, so Deb and Tony go in the kitchen to, finish cooking dinner or whatever. And the sister and the husband see a teddy bear that's sitting on the chair catch fire.
Yeah, pyrokinesis.
Right, which we just did a show about a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, that's very rare to see that in a haunting case.
Yeah.
Anything involving ghosts. How many episodes of pyrokinesis have ever been reported in a haunting case involving ghosts?
Not many.
This sounds like poltergeist.
It really does.
Pyrokinesis is just another form of telekinesis. You're not moving a solid object. You're just moving molecules. The faster you can get molecules moving, the hotter it gets. Yeah. Until flame explodes,
So they put out the teddy bear, and, Tony's like, what the fuck? And they're like, I don't know, the fucking bear just caught on fire. What the hell is that all about? So at this point, they're kind of thinking, now I should note that on the episode of the show, they only showed that happening once. Yeah. Later on, Deb said that actually happened a few times, at least 3 times. She's like, it was nothing.
So it's recurrent and spontaneous.
Yeah, she's like, it was nothing major. She said usually just something would catch fire, like a small thing, and then it would go out.
Yep, that's typical.
So they only showed it once on the show, but she said it did happen several times.
Yeah, that's typical.
Okay, so we're at the halfway point now, so we are going to take a short break, and then we will be right back talking about the Sallie House haunting.
Significant, because we are willing to put pen to paper and the end of the day that this house is very much haunted and will continue to be haunted for a very long time.
Okay, so we're back.
Yep.
Now, as I said, at this point, Deb is still believing that this is a little girl and it's all fine and everything like that. Whereas, like I said, the guy is more skeptical. And you have to think he has more reason to be. Now, one of the oddest things about this case is that Tony says that he saw Sallie, an apparition of her.
Yeah.
In the episode, and I'm assuming that this is similar to what happened in real life, it was evidently broad daylight.
Yeah.
And he was down in the kitchen, like getting some orange juice or some shit like that out of the fridge. He closes the fridge door and sees a little girl in a white dress and a little bow standing there.
Yeah. Apparitions don't mean shit in poltergeist.
True.
A poltergeist can appear any way it wants to appear depending on what your expectations are. It could have appeared to look like the devil. It could appear to look like a dead ancestor. If he was expecting it to look like a little girl, that's what he'd see.
Yeah. Now, this is what's weird because this is why I think it was on Paranormal Witness too. Because he drew a picture of that little girl. And it's on Google. I saw it.
Okay.
And I was like, I remember seeing on a TV show that he dropped it, but it wasn't on the Haunting episode.
It may have been Paranormal Witness.
So I think they did Paranormal Witness
too. Yeah, I just
too.
don't remember it.
Yeah. But he did draw a picture of like what she looked like and stuff like that, like what he saw. And it's kind of funny because at this point, Deb got kind of mad at him because she was like, well, I'm the one that likes the fucking ghost. Why didn't I get to see her? Why did she show herself to you?
Yeah, that sounds like, okay,
right.
typical.
So like I said, there's all this little kind of thing.
Yeah, it's just sounding like a poltergeist situation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it should be noted, nothing bad really ever happened to Deb or the baby. It was always him. It was always Tony that was getting attacked. Which, that could have some significance. Maybe she had like a lot of deep-seated resentment against him or something like that. And she was like acting out against Deb was, I mean. Because, not only did he get scratched and things like that, but one night he claims he was awakened by someone grabbing his wrists and jerking him violently out of bed. And at first she was just like, oh, you're dreaming or whatever. But then he shows and he says there are blistered welts on his wrists.
It just sounds like something a poltergeist does.
And now she says, oh, well, why would Sallie do that? Blah, blah, blah. And he's starting to think, I don't think this is a little girl.
Right.
I think there's something else in here. He even used the D word. He did say demon.
It's demons.
Yeah. So they called the psychic back. They didn't say what the psychic's last name was. Her first name was Barbara.
Right.
They called the psychic back and they're like, look, Tony's getting his ass beat by something and we don't think it's a little girl. So they're like, so can you, sort that situation out? So she evidently contacts this Sallie person and is like, is there someone else in here? Now, according to the psychic, she says that there is another entity in the house that is an older woman who is very powerful. They don't say she's malevolent necessarily, but they say she's an older female. spirit and that it's not the little girl. So now there's 2 ghosts in there.
Yeah.
And then, the psychic says, okay, well, I'm in way over my head here. Because I guess she can deal with 1 ghost, but 2, that's just...
See, here's the thing. How unlikely is it to run into 1 ghost? Very unlikely, right? Mm-hmm. Well, how unlikely is it to run into 2 ghosts in the same location?
Yeah.
I mean, that's like having lightning strike twice.
Yeah.
It's one thing.
Yeah.
What they're dealing with one thing.
Yeah. So, okay, so the psychic says, well, I'll put you in contact with someone else, like a whole paranormal team, and you should have a whole paranormal team come in here and try to see what's going on. So they call in, his name's Peter James, right? Mm-hmm. Peter James, who is actually quite a well-known paranormal investigator. He was on, like, all the shows back in the day, like Peter Sally, Jesse Raphael, and everything like
Peter
that.
James is cool. He was back from the daytime talk show era.
Yeah. He always seems like a nice
he was kind of like your standard 1970s New Age psychic.
Yeah.
But I'd rather have him in my house than the Warrens. I'm just going to say.
He had a different approach.
He was from a later generation. He was just like it was like the 70s type of thinking, which was a lot more flexible than Ed and Lorraine's demonology,
Where
everything was a demon, and Ed would come at you with silver bullets and hemlock, not hemlock, wolfsbane, and
hopefully not hemlock. Don't drink that, okay?
Don't drink the hemlock. And he'd do battle with werewolves and shit, and he'd tell you to move. Oh yeah, you're fucked. You're gonna have to get out of this house.
This guy, Peter James, like I said, he comes in with a little bit of a crew, and they had, an actor playing him that actually kind of looked, because he has that trademark like white hair and black mustache. Yeah. So they had an actor that had that too, which I thought was
you old timers would recognize him if you saw him. You go, oh yeah, that guy.
Do you know who he reminds me of? Tom Savini.
Yeah.
Horror fans will know who Tom Savini is. He's a very famous special effects guy. He trained Greg Nicotero.
He's very kind of reasonable, mild-mannered guy. He goes, oh, well, these spirits are upset, and we're going to work it out, and it'll be okay. This is your house. This is not their house. This is you're going to have to go. He's one of those kind of guys.
Yeah. Yeah. So when him and his team get there, he says, he comes in the house, and apparently the first thing he says, he's like, I thought you guys said you only had 1 kid and it was a baby. And they said, yeah, we do. And he said, well, I saw a little girl up in the window. Now he says, and I know like kind of all psychics and paranormal investigators say this, but he says, he's like, I don't want to know anything about the house before I go there, so I can just get impressions or whatever. So he evidently sees a little girl in the window watching him. Yeah. And he thought it was a real kid. So he goes in the house and kind of goes around and does his little psychic-y thing or whatever. And he also, and even though he says that he didn't know this beforehand, he also sees the ghost of a 7-year-old girl at the top of the staircase. And he also comes up with the name Sally, even though Deb and Tony said that they did not tell him that was the name.
Caveat.
But I don't know if that's the case.
Those guys, they had a tendency of finding out what the case was before they got there.
Yeah, it's like a hot reading.
It's like I'm not going to say anybody's trying to fool anybody or trick anybody, but it's a business.
I do think they have a tendency to try to find out some shit beforehand.
Yeah, they find out some shit beforehand.
So I don't know if he did that or not.
There's a way. But most likely there is.
But yeah, he says he didn't.
But to his credit is that this type of psychic, when they're doing this, they tend to settle the families down, which that's good. They don't make it worse. They try to make it better. So I'll say that in his credit. Yeah. Ed and Lorraine Warren will do things that would make it worse. Maybe they wouldn't try to make it worse, but that's what would happen. Yeah. Because, Ed and Lorraine would sensationalize. They'd panic a family. Yeah.
It's demons, you have to get out.
Yeah, demons, you have to go now. It's after the child.
Kill you.
It's after the child.
Right.
Bring in my little midget.
But yeah, like this one, it doesn't really appear, like I don't think anyone told this family that they were in danger. The baby never got hurt. The baby was never in danger, nothing like that. But Peter James comes in and he says, so he sees the little girl Sally. Now he goes up to the nursery where it seems like most of the phenomena was taking place. And he says, I feel a very powerful female spirit in here, which is what the other psychic said. And apparently this female spirit like pushed him out of the room. Yeah. Like he said, it's trying to repel me. And they kind of, how they do on a haunting with the flashing lights and all that. Yeah. Now, also at this stage, evidently they saw scratches appearing on Tony's back.
Yeah. Yeah. Common poltergeist.
Yeah.
Stuff. Yeah.
So evidently, so they said they saw that. Yeah. So Peter tells them, okay, he's like, well, this is just what the other psychic said. You have two spirits. It's a little girl. It's a woman. And the woman is very protective of the little girl. But he says to Tony, he's like, look, this is your house. You can't be afraid of them. That just like makes it worse. It's like you have to kind of put your foot down and stuff like that. Now, Peter also claimed that he had a vision in which he saw who these people were. Now, this is the story. Evidently, back in the day, late 19th century, this house was owned by a doctor, and the doctor had an African-American servant who he was apparently having an affair with.
Right.
And there was like all these little whispers and scandal around the town. Because it's a small town. It's Atchison, Kansas, for Christ's sake. So evidently the two of them had a daughter.
Yeah, they were like in a secret marriage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They had a daughter whose name was Sallie.
Yeah.
And she was 7. And she apparently died of pneumonia in the house. And I should note, too, I think I forgot to mention this, but the first psychic, Barbara, that came, the first time she went up to the nursery, she had to leave because she started to choke.
All right.
Now, there is one thing I should note here. Now, this is what it said on A Haunting. However, if you research the case other places than that show, there's a slightly different history, evidently. They say it is true that the house was owned by a physician. Evidently, him and his family lived upstairs, and the practice was downstairs. Now, I have not read any version of the story where he was having an affair with the servant, and that was their secret daughter. The 2 versions of the story I read, one of them did concern a girl that had pneumonia, but the girl was not his daughter. It was a kid that was brought there by a mother who was like, she's sick, please help her. And the doctor could not help her. So the little girl subsequently died. And because the doctor didn't help her, she has some kind of thing against men or something like that. Now, the worst version of that story is that the kid actually had appendicitis.
Yeah.
And when the mother brought the little girl to the house, the doctor thought that her appendix would burst. And she was freaking out because she was in so much pain, and he had to hold her down, and he was giving her the ether, the gas. Yeah. And because she was struggling so much, she wasn't completely under sedation, and he started to cut into her. Yeah. And she flipped the fuck out. And apparently she died on the operating table. And she thought she was being tortured, and that's how she died, and it was very traumatic. And she hates men now. That's why she was only attacking. Now they like I said,
they got all this evidence. How? Through seances?
I don't know.
It sounds like an embellishment.
I'm just saying, those are the 2 stories I've heard. Neither of them have to do with the doctor having an affair with the servant.
No, I'll tell you what. Those 2 stories are embellishments of Peter James' first story. Yeah. That's all they are.
It probably will.
Somebody went, oh yeah, well, he's a respected psychic, so he must, but you know what? I see more than that. This is how it really happened. So they're agreeing with him and disagreeing at the same time.
Yeah, because like I said,
I'm going to say no, and chances are Peter James' version didn't happen either. You'd have to do an investigation on that house to see who's lived there before.
Yeah.
You have to, and I guarantee you're not going to be able to find anybody matching the description of that doctor and
Sallie. That's what I mean.
This is all something that was invented by the very first psychic that showed up there. The little local friend of theirs came up with this, that there was a little girl, and then there was an older one. It's just a poltergeist. It's a poltergeist case, and they're adding to the story. Yeah. And the poltergeist is just acting out the characters it's given. Yeah. That's all it is.
But, so anyway, like I said,
I don't buy it.
What?
I don't buy it.
So researching
it's too complicated, it's too fancy, it's
researching
too sexy.
Around the internet, it's like, apparently the house was owned, because the house was built like in the 1800s, 1870s, something like that. And apparently mostly occupied by the Finney family. And apparently one of them was a physician, Charles Finney. But now the show, A Haunting, said that there was a little girl named Sallie who had lived there or had lived in the area, and that her grave was still in the area. Although they said, okay, well, funeral records show that, but her grave doesn't have a name on it anymore because it's worn off because it's old. Okay. So, take that as you will.
But there's a lot of Sallies.
Right. That's what I mean. So, there's no way of knowing that really, unless someone invents a time machine. Right. And goes back and figures out. I was just saying, because I was curious when I was researching the show, like around different, different various blogs and things like that. I said, I wonder how, because I hadn't seen the episode of A Haunting in a while. So I said, I wonder if they're going to, because I didn't remember them repeating this story, but it was one that was like that, but it was similar.
Okay.
So evidently what Peter James was saying was that the older female spirit was actually Sally's mother, the servant, and that she was protective of the little girl and for some reason did not like Tony, because I don't know why. But so Tony's getting his ass beat, and another thing that's been happening too, other than him being scratched and grabbed and stuff like that, is that evidently Deb says, and he says too, that his personality started to change. Yeah. So he's kind of hinting at some possession shit going on.
All right.
That maybe, and I think he kind of was implying that maybe he thought there was something demonic in the house.
Right.
Because
he thought it was messing with his mind.
He thought it was messing with his mind because...
That's commonly reported, though.
Yeah, because he started saying that, like, he started getting, like, really angry for no reason, that he started having horrible thoughts about hurting his wife, which he had never had before, things of that nature.
Yeah, poltergeist sometimes can sometimes appear to be possession. And I've also heard stories that people other than the poltergeist focus can be affected on an emotional level. There was another case about a couple that would start fighting each other, and they would see like a red haze, you know.
I remember you telling me about that. Yeah.
And they eventually abandoned that house because they would just start fighting each other over little bitty issues.
Right.
And it was like something that was trying to get both of them fighting. Which kind of reminds me of that damn story from Star Trek. Remember when they had the alien red energy getting the Klingons?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and it was feeding off their anger. Yeah.
Well, if there was some kind of entity that did, that's what they would do. They would try to, like, turn people against each other so they could feed on the conflict and everything like that. And there was actually, I can't remember what season it was from, but there was another episode of A Haunting where, do you remember that one where the house was supposedly haunted and... It wasn't the Raccoon Man one. It was one where the dad got kind of like his personality started to change. And remember, he came back to the house one night with an axe and tried to kill his wife.
Yeah. I forgot the name of that episode.
That was some Amityville horror shit right there. I don't even remember the name. I don't even know if we have that one. So maybe
I have it.
Oh, you do?
I have it. He came through the back door with an axe. It was just like
Here's Johnny.
Yeah,
right?
like Here's Johnny. Yeah, I remember that.
That does seem to be a common trope on A Haunting, and I don't know if that's
because... He evidently went to jail over that.
Yeah. I'd kind of be curious. We're going to have to do that episode, too, if I can remember what it was called.
It wasn't Fear House.
No. Okay. Like I said, they have such generic titles, I can, you know...
They're hard to tell apart.
They're hard to tell apart. Like, other than...
I'm going to have one... My episode's going to be called Ghost House.
They might as well be.
Yeah. Haunted House.
Yeah, that's you might as well.
Yeah, sure.
Because it's like, where demons dwell or where evil lurks. It's like, that could be any episode.
In the shadow of despair.
Yeah, I'm just saying. So the only reason I remember this one is because it had a name in it.
All right. Okay, so what happens? But
yeah, so at the end, evidently, I think they were going to try and stick it out, but because Tony was evidently getting to the point where he wanted to kill his wife, and he didn't really know why. Like, he felt like something else
what they
was
were doing
possessing
is
him.
What was happening during that time is what's his name again? The psychic Peter James.
Peter James, yeah.
Yeah, Peter James told them, says we have to do a cleansing of this house, but to do it we have to have a full history and we got to prepare for it. It's going to take some time to get everything together. So stay in the house, and when we're ready to do the cleansing, we'll be back. You know, and the husband was like, "Oh man, I don't want to go back in the house. Blah 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 blah. I don't like this house." And then they started fighting again within days. And he told her, he says, "This thing's messing with my mind. Messing with my mind. I'm afraid I'm gonna hurt you. I'm afraid it wants me to kill you." So he says, like, we got to get out of here. So she was like, okay, let's get out of here. And they left. Yeah, there was a scene like near the end where there was no cleansing. Yeah, they never showed one. Maybe that's why people are so interested in that house. Maybe. Yeah. Because, that's usually how an episode of A Haunting will end. Like, they'll have the cleansing and it'll either work or not. Yeah, I don't remember them doing a cleansing. No, they didn't. Right. Because the end of it was Tony's coming down the stairs and he's looking at his wife sitting down there, like, all murderous and shit. Right. And then he apparently gets, like, knocked over by an unseen. So I don't know if they're implying that Sally was like, hey, knock it off. Like pushing him or something like that, like to get him to quit it. But I think at that point, he was just kind of over it. So he's like, let's just get out of here. It's not worth it. So they lived in the house for 22 months. Right. That's how long they were there.
like I said, Deb Pickman did write a book about it called The Sallie House. I haven't read it, but I read a little bit of her like talking about it. And she said the stuff they showed on sightings was kind of exaggerated and not exactly what happened. Just from what I read of her talking about, it sounded like a haunting mostly got it right. She said now the scratches on his back weren't that crazy looking, like they weren't like super bloody or anything like that. She said you could see them.
But they were exaggerated.
But yeah, that was exaggerated. And also, like I said, she actually said that teddy bear catching on fire, she's like, that actually happened more than once. They only showed it once in the show. But that was kind of a common thing, just very small fires. She's like, it wasn't a huge deal or anything like that. The main thing that happened a lot was the toys like being moved. Right. Sitting in a circle, which like we said, that's very similar to shit that happened in your case.
See, I'm watching the whole thing, and a haunting is trying to present this case as a dramatic haunting involving a ghost. And for me, it's not working because it's not manifesting as a typical ghost story or a ghost sighting. Usually when you're dealing with ghosts, it's just the occasional apparition. The ghost isn't interacting with the person. It's almost kind of like a recording from the past. Or you see the apparition of a dead person who gives you a message from the other side, vanishes, turns out that the message checks out. That's a typical ghost case. Ghosts don't typically move objects. I've never heard of a ghost causing pyrokinesis.
Yeah, I mean, ghost cases, usually you would just see them. You would just like see an apparition, or you would hear footsteps or screams or something like that.
There's a lot of different kinds of manifestations, but usually nothing's moved.
Yeah, there's usually
and
not
I've never heard
physical
of anything
phenomena.
bursting into flames. That's always poltergeist.
Yeah,
always.
Pretty much. And like I said, and we talked a lot about that on our pyrokinesis, the Kineto show that we did. And
the story makes a lot more sense if you shoot this story as a poltergeist story. And that's not the way the episode was shot.
Yeah, they seem to concentrate mostly on the ghost thing and, operating under the assumption that the ghost was real, that there actually was a little girl that named Sally that lived there that died in the house of pneumonia or of appendicitis or whatever it was. So they did kind of shoot it like that. Now, there were a few things that the family reported that were not on the haunting episode. Some of them were on the episode of sightings that they did. Evidently, there were a lot of cold spots. They actually had a dog, which they didn't show on
cold spots is also a poltergeist.
Yeah. They also
but the thing is, though, is that this is after the focus has left the location. So I guarantee you, who did this? Who did that one? That was what team? Sightings.
The sightings show was done while they still lived there.
Oh, okay. Well, they still lived there? Yeah. Well, then that's poltergeist.
Yeah.
Because we had cold spots at Mammoth Mountain. Right. That's very common.
Yeah. Because like I said, I think that was the first TV show that was made. And they said mid-90s, and the Pickman family moved out in 95 or in early 96, somewhere around there. So sightings was done while they still lived there. Now, like Tony reported cold spots. They also had a dog, which they didn't show on a haunting, that would bark and growl at nothing. Also very common. And apparently the sightings crew, while they were there, they supposedly saw the scratches appearing on the dude's back.
It's poltergeist.
And filmed it and shit like that.
I sound like a broken record.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
I sound like a broken record, but that's poltergeist. That's not a haunting. Regular listeners know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. So evidently, after they moved out of the house, I guess that Tony still had scratches and shit like that appearing periodically after they moved somewhere else, but that eventually it tapered off, which again also sounds like a poltergeist. Yeah. And if Deb was the focus, like I said, maybe she was acting out some resentment against him, some anger against him.
It's, she's a young mother. She just had a baby. There's a hormonal factor there. Then there's the stress of the financial stresses and, possibly even like personal stresses between the husband and the wife that actually cause frustrations to mount, and psychokinesis starts to happen. But it's under the control of the right hemisphere of the brain. Yeah. So it's kind of like acting as a character out of a dream. You can't really control it. But it's open to suggestions. If you tell it it's little kids, it acts kind of like a little kid. If it's a demon, if somebody says, well, it's kind of like a demon, it starts to do things like a demon. The woman wanted it, so it was okay with her. The husband didn't want it, so it attacked him. Yeah. Okay, so there's a conflict about, one of them wants it, the focus wants it to stay, and the husband wants it to go. So that's going to cause trouble.
Now, here's an interesting thing, just in closing. Here's an interesting thing that Deb Pickman says that was actually not addressed on the Sighting Show or on A Haunting. Now, she's talking about the older spirit, that she believed the older spirit that was, the kid's mother. Now, she says, and this is a direct quote, "The woman was, to say the least, very fond of my husband, and tried to get close to him and put great strife between our husband and wife bond. As reported to me in recent years by my husband, he said that at that time he was having horrible and uncontrollable thoughts of hating the mere sight of me, as well as physically hurting me to the point that I would no longer be a part of his life." So she's kind of saying, and she also says later on, she says, "Laying on the couch in a deep sleep one afternoon, Tony sat up, looked directly at me, and in a strange voice, seemingly not his own, said, 'He's mine.' Mm-hmm. Then he laid back down. When he woke up 20 minutes later, he couldn't remember anything of what had happened." So she's kind of saying, and like I said, they didn't really talk about this on the show. She's kind of saying that this woman was kind of like after her husband or trying to like cause some kind of strife in between, which to me suggests what we were just talking about even more.
Yeah, it's her.
So she's like inventing this female figure like coming between them.
Yeah, and she's inventing an alter ego of herself, kind of like it's her id.
Isn't that fascinating?
Right.
Wouldn't that be fascinating if that was
id
what she
wants
was doing?
the husband.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then, the id is her disembodied, kind of like subconscious. Her subconsciousness, and it kind of like a bad part of her, is kind of like in a state of astral projection, kind of trying to possess him and get him to hate her.
Yeah.
But it's all a game. It's just like a nightmare character come to life. That's all it is.
Yeah.
It's still her.
Yeah.
When you're having a nightmare, you know what I mean?
Right.
That character in your nightmare is attacking you. Well, who is that? That's you.
That's you.
It's you. It's just another version of you, and that's what that thing was.
Yeah. I tend to agree.
It's just psychokinesis.
Like I said, other people, there have been many, many, many paranormal groups that have gone and investigated this house in subsequent years. Ghost Adventures went there. There's it's on a ghost tour in Kansas and all this other kind of stuff. Lots of people said, they've felt things, that they've had various impressions in there, that they caught EVPs, all this kind of stuff. So I don't know. I don't want to definitively say this, that, and the other thing. Who knows? I don't know. I didn't watch everything about this. I didn't watch all the Ghost Adventures. I didn't watch all that.
No, I'd like to do. I'd just get me, my aunt, my uncle, Wesley, and you. We go back to Mammoth Mountain in that same chateau.
I have been wanting to do that for ages.
And see if we can ramp that sucker up.
I want to see.
You
have to get it. You have to get in the same one. You remember which one it is, right?
Yeah, I know
it's been remodeled, but it's still there.
It still looks the same. It's just different furniture in it.
Yeah.
Painted. Yeah, we go in there. I wonder how much it costs to rent it.
I don't know.
And then get that sucker flowing, get it rolling, and then we'll have video cameras and stuff like that, and see if we can catch anything.
We need to do that. Let's start a Kickstarter so we can we can go out to Mammoth Mountain and see if we can revisit the past.
And we'll make a Mammoth Mountain show.
That would be awesome. I would love to do
hours of that.
I've never been to California.
And then maybe we'll get Steve Mara to come.
Oh, wouldn't that be fun?
We'll have Steve Mara do a Kickstarter to raise the money for it.
Yeah, we'll all go out.
Because it's for lease, I think. I think that
last time I checked, it was still you could rent it or buy it.
Probably rent it for like 2 weeks or a week or something like that.
That would be fascinating. We should totally. What a good idea that is.
Yeah.
All right. So anyway, we're kind of getting to the end of the show. So we hope you guys have enjoyed our investigation of the Sallie's House haunting, specifically the episode of A Haunting about it. Like I said, I read some other shit about it too, but I can't. There's so much about it that I couldn't get to the bottom of all of it. So if any of you guys have been there, if you're from Kansas, just let me know how that goes. And as I usually say, if you would like to support the show in some small way, you can go to our Patreon page, which is patreon.com/13o'clock podcast, and give a monthly donation. If you would rather give a one-time donation, you can go to our blog, which is 13o'clockpodcast.wordpress.com, and there is a link in the sidebar to a PayPal account. Also, check out our last movie review, which was The Hand. Also, I know I've been forgetting to say this lately, but go to Zazzle.com/13o'clock. We have some 5 or 6 different designs of t-shirts and things of that nature. And that'll do it for episode 67, and we will see you next week. Bye.
I just moved in my new house today. Move as hard as the gospel way. And instead of ringing the chains right loud, I moved in a haunted house.